I am the daughter my own mother sold for a billionaire husband. She didn't just abandon me at the harbor when I was 12. She traded me, my future, for hers. The final brutal payment wasn't in cash, but in the churning water a super yacht left in its wake, and the silence where a family used to be. My name is Laura. Before I share my story, I want to know you are here with me. Just say, listening in the comments, or let me know where you are. I love hearing how far my story can reach. Sometimes, even the smallest connection can make a story feel heard. Thank you. And now, here's my story. Chapter 1. The Final Transaction. The wind coming off the water at Port Meridian's private marina was a physical thing. It pushed against my thin jacket, snaking its way into the gaps at my wrists and neck. It smelled of salt diesel and a kind of deep, bottomless cold. Behind my mother, Eleanor the super yacht glowed. Every light was on, making it look like a fallen constellation against the bruised twilight sky. Its name was scripted in elegant chrome letters near the stern, the arbitrage. She wasn't looking at me. Her gaze was fixed just over my shoulder, as if addressing an invisible board of directors. There was no hug, no trembling lip. Her voice was the same one she used for investor calls, crisp, measured, and devoid of any real warmth. "This isn't a punishment, Laura," she said. "This is a lesson in self-sufficiency. Julian and I need to close this funding round. You're intelligent enough to navigate this." The words were full of corporate static I couldn't quite tune out. Funding round, navigate. She wasn't my mother in that moment. She was a CEO, and I was a problem on her quarterly report. She held out a slim leather wallet. It wasn't a gift. It was a deliverable. "This contains enough resources for the next 2 weeks," she continued, her voice unwavering. "Consider it your seed capital. Use it wisely." Inside was a plastic gift card and a business card. Julian's. My stomach twisted. It wasn't just abandonment. It was a business challenge, a cruel test designed to look like an opportunity. For a dizzying second, my panic was replaced by confusion. Was I supposed to solve this? Was this a game I had to win to prove my worth? Then the memory hit me sharp and sudden, as a flash of lightning. Just last week, I'd seen her in front of her bedroom mirror rehearsing. Her hands had moved in the same precise gestures, her voice hitting the same confident notes as she pitched to her own reflection. We provide the necessary resources. We empower them to be self-sufficient, a wise investment in their future. This wasn't a conversation. It was a pre-scripted press release. My stepfather, Julian Croft, finally moved. He strode over the expensive leather of his shoes, silent on the dock. He didn't even glance at me. His focus was entirely on my mother. "Eleonora, they're waiting. The schedule is tight." She nodded once, a quick, efficient dip of her head. Then she turned and walked up the gangplank without a single look back. The ramp was drawn up. The lines were cast off. I stood frozen as the arbitrage began to glide away from the pier, its powerful engines a low, confident thrum in the growing darkness. The ship's horn blasted, once a deep, mournful sound that echoed across the water, swallowing the sob that was stuck in my throat. I hadn't just been left behind. I'd been liquidated. Chapter 2. Signal noise. For the first hour, I just stood there, letting the cold seep into my bones. The vibrant living harbor of the afternoon had transformed. Now it was a place of shadows and strange mechanical noises. My mother's lesson echoed in my head. "Solve the problem, Laura." My fingers, numb and clumsy, fumbled for Julian's business card. On the back, an elegant script read, "Private car service," followed by a number. A flicker of hope. This was part of the test. I was supposed to call the car. I found a sheltered corner out of the wind and dialed my phone screen glaring in the dark. A robotic voice answered. "Thank you for calling Croft Executive Transport. Please enter your client account number or reservation code." I had neither. After a moment, a human operator came on the line, her voice bored. "Account number I don't have one," I stammered. "My name is Laura. Julian Croft is my stepfather." A pause. The sound of typing. "I have no active pickups under that name. Is there a reservation code on the card?" There wasn't. The card was a prop. A hollow gesture, meaningless without the right code, the right status. It was a door with no key. Panic began to bubble in my chest, hot and sharp. I saw a port authority officer making his rounds, his flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. Safety. An adult. I took a step forward, ready to run to him, my mouth opening to call out. Then his radio crackled, the sound sharp in the night air. "Copy that." Found another group of runaways down by Warehouse 3. Apprehend and transfer to the Youth Intake Center. Apprehend. Intake Center. The words were cold, institutional. I imagined a sterile gray building filled with angry lost kids and overworked adults who wouldn't believe my story. A place you were processed, not protected. A new fear, greater than the fear of being alone, seized me. I shrank back into the shadows, wrapping my arms around myself. The one official path to safety had just revealed itself as a trap. Hunger was a dull ache in my stomach. The cold was getting worse. I spotted the sterile, bright glow of an automated convenience kiosk near the public ferry terminal. My fingers closed around the prepaid gift card. It was my only resource. I bought a steaming cup of hot chocolate, the machine whirring and clanking with an indifferent sort of efficiency. The transaction went through. For a second, I felt a tiny, pathetic surge of accomplishment. Then the receipt printed. Along with the price of the drink, it showed the card's remaining balance. My breath caught in my throat. $9.96 of 50. $10,000. The number stared up at me, mocking me. This wasn't seed capital. This was a buyout, a severance package. It was the price of my silence, the cost of my disappearance from their lives. The warmth from the cup in my hands did nothing to stop the chill that was spreading from the inside out. I was a settled account. I stumbled to a bench, huddling in the dark. The small bag my mother had left me contained only a bottle of water and a glossy, heavy magazine. It was the latest annual report for Julian's venture capital fund. I was about to throw it away when I forced myself to open it desperately, searching for, I didn't know what, a clue, an answer, and then I saw it. A photo from a charity gala. Eleonora, stunning in a silver dress, laughing at something Julian was saying. But on the edge of the frame, half turned away, was a man with kind, familiar eyes and dark, unruly hair, a ghost from a life I barely remembered. The caption beneath was a single sterile line. Managing partners Julian Croft and Eleanor Croft, with one of the firm's foundational partners, Samuel Blackwood. Foundational partner. The word felt alien. My mother had always told me he was a failure, a man who had disappeared because he couldn't handle responsibility. The lie was right there, printed in glossy ink, and it planted a single tiny seed of a question in the frozen ground of my despair. Chapter 3, open source? My phone's battery icon was a terrifying sliver of red 10%. Time was running out. Using the last of my data, I searched the name Samuel Blackwood. The first results were a wall of incomprehensible tech articles, financial news, and conference speaker bios. But I scrolled deeper past the corporate headshots and press releases. I found a link to an old text-based forum discussing something called open source software. It looked like a relic from a different internet. In a post dated 8 years ago, a user named S. Blackwood had engaged in a long, passionate argument about digital ethics. And at the bottom of his profile, there was an email address. It was the longest of long shots. My fingers were trembling so badly, I could barely type. I wrote the simplest, most desperate thing I could think of. To S.A. Blackwood, opensesame.org, subject, help. Are you Samuel Blackwood? My mother is Eleonora. My name is Laura. I'm at the Port Meridian Harbor and I need help. I hit send and held my breath watching the battery percentage drop to 9%. A reply came back almost instantly. My heart leapt. He answered. But it wasn't him. It was a machine. Thank you for your message. Samuel is currently delivering the keynote address at the Decentralized Web Summit and will be offline for the next 24 hours. If this is an emergency, please access our community's IRC channel, Community Bridge. My hope crashed. The automated reply was another locked door, another set of instructions I didn't understand. IRC channel. It felt like my mother's business jargon all over again. A language designed to keep people like me out. The battery was at 7%. I had no other choice. Following the link, my phone opened a stark black screen, filled with scrolling lines of green text. Usernames flashed by discussing things like kernel panics and repository forks. I was more lost here than I had been on the pier. Taking a deep, shaky breath, I typed my own message into the river of code, a child's scrawl on a blueprint. Hello, I'm Laura. My mom is Eleonora. Can anyone help me? The fire hose of technical chatter stopped. The screen went utterly still. For 5 terrifying seconds, there was only silence. Then a new line appeared, from a username colored a bold, authoritative red. Laura, do not move. We are tracing your network IP. Stay near a public Wi-Fi signal. Someone is coming. A moment later, another name in blue. I'm in Port Meridian, 10 minutes from the docks. What does she look like? The rescue had begun. But it wasn't the warm, comforting hand of a father I had imagined. It was the cold, efficient, and unnervingly fast response of a faceless network. A new kind of fear, sharp and uncertain, replaced the dull ache of loneliness. I didn't know if I was being saved or if I had just stumbled into something far more complicated than I could ever imagine. Chapter 4: The Familiar Stranger. The IRC channel was a lifeline and a terror. A faceless network was coming for me. But were they friends or just a different kind of monster? I huddled deeper into the alcove I'd found behind a stack of shipping pallets. My phone clutched in a death grip the screen, the only light in my shrinking world. A soft whirring sound made me flinch. An electric scooter slid to a silent stop near the public ferry terminal. The rider was a young woman, maybe 20, with a shock of dark hair escaping a knit cap. She wore a bright red jacket. She didn't look around, didn't call my name. Instead, with a practiced calm, she sat on a nearby bench, pulled a laptop from her backpack, and flipped it open. I could see her screen from my hiding spot. It was the same black window, the same scrolling green text. My breath hitched. She began to type. On site. No visual on target. Self-describing. Female red jacket laptop with a penguin sticker. I will hold here. It was so smart, so completely non-threatening. She was giving me all the power, letting me see her, identify her, and make the choice. This was them. This was help. I stepped out from behind the pallets, a small trembling ghost in the vast empty plaza. Her eyes snapped up sharp and intelligent. They softened when they saw me. "Laura," she asked, her voice low and steady. I could only nod. She closed the laptop and stood. "I'm Anya. Sam sent us. You're safe now." The relief was so overwhelming, it felt like a physical blow. My knees buckled. She was there in an instant, a surprisingly strong arm around my shoulders, guiding me to the bench. She produced a metal thermos from her bag and poured a cup of steaming hot chocolate that smelled impossibly sweet. The warmth spread through my cold hands, a small miracle in the frozen night. As I took the first sip, a new set of headlights swept across the plaza. A black sedan, the kind with tinted windows that seemed to drink the light, purred to a stop at the curb. Two men in dark, well-tailored suits stepped out. They didn't look like they were searching for a lost child. They looked like they were hunting for a fugitive. Anya's whole body went rigid. She pulled me back, her voice a tense whisper in my ear. "Not cops. Julian's people. He must have put a tracker in the gift card." The fragile bubble of safety popped. We weren't leaving. We were escaping. "Go now," she hissed. A tiny transparent bud in her ear seemed to whisper to her. "They're watching the main exit. We need the service alleys." She grabbed my hand and we ran. We plunged into a maze of concrete and steel behind the polished waterfront facades. Dumpsters and stacked crates became our cover. Anya moved with a startling confidence, following directions I couldn't hear. "Left at the steam pipe. They're checking the cameras at the fish market. Go through the ice storage. Okay, clear for the next block." It was terrifying and surreal. I was a piece on a chessboard being moved by invisible players against an unseen enemy. This wasn't just a father's network. It was an army. Chapter 5. The Source Code Sanctuary. The place Anya took me wasn't a home. It was a repurposed brick warehouse in a part of the city where the salt-laced air was mixed with the smell of old industry. A single, discreetly painted bridge logo was next to the steel door. Inside, the noise hit me first, the low, constant hum of servers, the click-clack of dozens of keyboards, and the murmur of quiet, intense conversations. The space was a massive, open-plan room, a chaotic but strangely organized ecosystem of workstations, whiteboards covered in complex equations, and a communal kitchen where a pot of coffee perpetually brewed. "Welcome to the bridge," Anya said, her voice softening now that we were inside. "It's a community hub Sam funds. We build things here, free things for everyone." She led me to a small private workspace in a quieter corner. It had a desk with multiple monitors, a comfortable chair, and a lofted bed, accessible by a ladder. It was Spartan, but it was warm, and most importantly, it was locked from the inside. "This is yours for now," she said, handing me a clean towel and a set of plain gray sweatpants. "Shower's over there. Kitchen's always open. Rest." For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I felt a flicker of real safety. As I lay in the loft bed, the hum of the servers below was like a mechanical lullaby. I realized with a sudden clarity that the $10,000 my mother had left me could barely pay for a single server in this rack. My father's money wasn't on a yacht in the Mediterranean. It was here, humming in the walls, powering this strange, vibrant sanctuary. But as the hours turned into a day, a new kind of anxiety began to creep in. I kept asking Anya, my voice small, "When will I get to talk to my dad?" And her answers were always evasive. He's in a different time zone. The connection has to be absolutely secure. He's finishing a major speech. I started looking at the photos pinned to the community bulletin boards. There he was, Samuel Blackwood. But he was never alone. He was in the middle of a crowd of cheering students on the steps of a government building, holding a protest sign for digital privacy, or on a grainy video call with a dozen other faces from around the world. He was everywhere and nowhere at once. He was a legend, a symbol. But was he a father? The physical walls of the bridge were a fortress, but my emotional world was beginning to feel just as precarious as it had on that pier. I had been transferred from the custody of a mother who treated me like a line item to a community that revered my father like a ghost. I was safe, but I was still terrifyingly alone. Chapter 6: Ghost in the Machine. On the second day, Anya gathered a few of the others. "He's on," she said, her voice holding a note of reverence. She led me to the center of the main room, where a massive projector screen flickered to life. And there he was, my father. He was standing on a stage, a spotlight creating a halo around his unruly hair. The video was one way for his security, Anya explained. He could hear me, but he couldn't see me. He looked older than in the photos, tired, but his eyes, the same eyes I'd seen in that magazine picture, were exactly as I remembered. They were kind. "Laura," he said, and his voice broke a little. It was real. It was him. "Laura, sweetheart, I'm so sorry. I'm getting on a plane as soon as this is over. I'm coming home. Just hold on. Everything is going to be okay now." Tears I didn't know I had left streamed down my face. It was a chaotic, imperfect reunion, a conversation across thousands of miles with a man who was little more than a collection of pixels. But it was real. Then, in his rush of emotion, he said something that made the air in the room go still. I can't believe she would do this. Not again. Not after what happened with Project Chimera. Before I could even form the question in my mind, the screen fizzled and went black. Anya cursed under her breath. Connection dropped. They must be running a sweep. The name hung in the air, a fragment of a puzzle I didn't know existed. Chimera. As if on cue, the front door buzzed. A courier in a crisp uniform stood outside, holding a large, elegantly wrapped box from a high-end department store. It was addressed to Laura Blackwood. My heart hammered against my ribs. It was from her. Inside was a treasure trove of luxury, a cashmere sweater, softer than anything I'd ever touched, perfectly fitting jeans, and the newest, slimmest tablet on the market. Tucked inside was a handwritten card on heavy cream-colored stationery. "My dearest Laura, there has been a terrible, terrible misunderstanding. A communication error. I've been so worried. Please turn on this tablet and call me so I can hear your voice. I love you more than anything. Mom." For a heartbeat, hope that treacherous, stupid thing fluttered in my chest. A misunderstanding. She was sorry. I reached for the tablet, but Anya's hand shot out and stopped me. Her face was grim. The other coders had gathered around, looking at the device as if it were a venomous snake. "Don't turn it on," Anya said, her voice flat. "It's a Trojan horse." "What?" She looked at me, her eyes full of a pity that was worse than anger. "It's a custom piece of hardware. Julian's company specializes in this. The moment you connect it to any network, it will give them your exact location, bypass all our firewalls, and activate its microphone and camera. She doesn't want to talk to you, Laura. She wants to find you. The beautiful gift was a spy. The loving note was a lie designed to bait the trap. The last desperate hope that this was all a mistake didn't just die. It was murdered. My mother wasn't just gone. She was actively hunting me. Chapter 7. The Encrypted Appear. The lie of the tablet broke something inside me. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. I wasn't going to wait for a ghost dad anymore. I needed answers. I found Anya in front of a bank of humming servers, her face illuminated by lines of scrolling code. My mother told me my father was a failure who ran away from us. I said, my voice shaking with a fury I didn't know I possessed. That's a lie, isn't it? What is Project Chimera? Anya looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. The pity was gone, replaced by a look of resolve. He knew this day might come, she said. She led me to a locked, refrigerated server room that felt like the heart of the bridge. Sam archives everything. His whole life is in here. She logged into a terminal and pointed to a partition on the screen, marked with a single, ominous icon of a padlock. BLKWD archive a private. I can't open this, she said. But you can. He told me that in an absolute emergency, the final decryption passphrase was your name and your full birth date, no spaces or dashes. My fingers trembled as I typed it in. Laura Z9152013. Access granted. The partition opened, revealing a file system. 2 folders immediately caught my eye: Project Chimera and Laura Trust. My heart pounding, I clicked on Project Chimera first. It was full of early emails between S. Blackwood and E. Vance, my mother's maiden name. They were brainstorming, sharing snippets of code, their messages full of excitement and shared passion. They were partners. They had built this thing, whatever it was, together. And then we found the last file in the folder. It wasn't a piece of code. It was a scanned PDF. My eyes scanned the dense legal text, but certain words jumped out, branded into my memory. It was a formal cease and desist letter from the legal firm representing Julian Croft. She hereby demand you cease all public and private claims of intellectual property ownership related to the foundational technology of Croft Innovations, heretofore known as Project Chimera. Further demand you cease and desist all attempts at communication with our client, Ms. Eleanor Vance, and her daughter, Laura. Any violation will be met with the most severe legal repercussions. The document was dated 8 years ago. I stared at the screen, the cold of the server room, seeping into my very soul. My mother hadn't just lied. She hadn't just left. She had used the full force of a corporate legal team to methodically, brutally, and officially erase my father from my life. The abandonment at the harbor wasn't the beginning. It was just the end of a war I never knew was being fought. The question was no longer simply, why did you leave me? It was, what is Project Chimera, that you would burn down our entire world to possess it? And what secret was waiting for me, locked away in that final unopened folder with my name on it? Chapter 8. Digital Inheritance. The scanned pages of the cease and desist letter burned on the screen a legal document that felt more like a death certificate. It was the official record of my father's murder from my life. 8 years of lies, 8 years of a manufactured reality, all laid bare in cold corporate typeface. I wasn't just a child who had been abandoned. I was the subject of a hostile takeover, a piece of collateral in a war I never knew existed. Anya's hand rested gently on my shoulder. There's still one left, she said, her voice soft. Her cursor hovered over the last, unopened folder. Laura Trust. Inside was a single file, its icon a heavy, impenetrable lock. Anya shook her head. This isn't standard encryption. It's one of Sam's custom algorithms. The key isn't a password you can type. It's biometric, designed so only he or his direct bloodline could ever open it. My heart hammered. This was it. A final message locked away by the one thing my mother could never take from me, my own DNA. Anya guided my hand to the laptop's small square fingerprint scanner. I pressed my thumb against the cool glass. The screen flashed, and for a second I thought it would fail. Then a click. The lock icon vanished. The file wasn't a document or a bank statement. It was a video. I clicked play, and a younger version of my father filled the screen. He was in a simple room, maybe a dorm, with a whiteboard covered in equations behind him. He looked directly into the camera, and for the first time, I felt like he was speaking only to me. Laura? He began, his voice thick with an emotion I couldn't yet name. If you're watching this, it means things have gone very, very wrong. He explained everything. Project Chimera was supposed to be their gift to the world, an ethical AI framework, open and free for anyone to use and build upon. He talked about Eleanor's brilliance, but also the ambition that had started to curdle inside her, stoked by Julian Croft's promises of power. She wanted to patent it, to sell it, to own it. He refused. She saw Chimera as a product. He said, his eyes filled with a deep sadness. I saw it as a promise, so she took it. She and Julian locked it down, built their empire on my work, on our work, and then they wrote me out of the story. He leaned closer to the camera. But you can't erase the truth, Laura. Not permanently. The inheritance I'm leaving you isn't money. It's this, the truth, and the key to proving it. He explained the existence of an immutable timestamp, a digital signature logged on a public blockchain years ago that would prove his original authorship of the Chimera Code beyond any legal dispute. It's the one thing their lawyers can't bury. The video ended. The room was silent save for the hum of the servers. The truth was out, a heavy, suffocating weight in the cold air. Just then, the main door to the bridge hissed open. He stood there, framed in the doorway. Older than in the video, lines of exhaustion and worry etched around his kind eyes, but it was him. Samuel Blackwood, my father. Not a ghost, not a legend, not a face on a screen. He was real. I flew into his arms, bearing my face in his jacket that smelled of coffee and long-distance travel. He held me tightly, his hand stroking my hair, whispering, "I'm here. I'm so sorry. I'm here now." But the moment of catharsis was shattered as he pulled back, his face grim and urgent. "They know," he said, his voice low and fast. "Decrypting that file triggered an alert on their system, just as it did on mine. Julian's lawyers are on their way here right now. They'll have a court order to seize everything, claiming it's corporate espionage. We have the truth, Laura, but we're about to lose it." Chapter 9. The final funding round the bridge transformed from a quiet sanctuary into a wartime command center. Laptops flew open, lines of code scrolled across screens. The community, my father's silent army, was mobilizing for its final battle. The plan was audacious, born from the open-source ethos my father championed. They wouldn't sue, they wouldn't demand money, they would execute his original vision, they would set Chimera free. The sleek black sedan pulled up outside, just as the last piece of their plan was falling into place. Julian and Eleanor didn't storm in. They entered calmly, flanked by two lawyers in sharp suits, an invading force trying to project an aura of inevitable victory. My mother's eyes found me first. Her face was a mask of practiced sorrow. She dismissed the lawyers and asked to speak to me alone. "Laura, you have to understand," she whispered, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "I did it all for you. Sam, he was a dreamer. He would have let us starve for his ideals. I had to make hard choices to give you the future you deserved." Tears welled in her eyes, a perfect, crystalline performance. For a sickening second, the little girl inside me who had longed for her mother's love wanted to believe her. Julian cut the performance short. He stepped forward, his patience gone. "All right, the drama is over," he said, his voice like chipping ice. He looked not at me, but at my father. "We want the archive. In return, I'm prepared to establish a $50 million trust for the girl, a Series A investment in her future. Everyone signs an NDA and this all goes away." He was trying to buy my pain, to put a price tag on my father's life's work, to reduce our entire history to a transaction. I stood between them. My mother's false tears, my stepfather's insulting offer. They thought they had me cornered, a child dazzled by emotion and money. They thought they were in control. They didn't know that while they were talking, I was just buying time. I looked at my mother, and for the first time, I saw her clearly. The code of her personality was simple ambition override all else. "You taught me about sunk costs." "Mom," I said, my own voice startlingly steady, "the years I spent believing your lies. That's a sunk cost. It's time to cut my losses." Then I turned to Julian. "And as for your offer," I said, locking eyes with him, "we reject your terms." Behind them, Anya met my gaze and gave a single, almost imperceptible nod. Checkmate. On the massive projector screen, the video from my father's trust file began to play. But it wasn't playing for us. It was being live-streamed globally. Anya had sent out an alert an hour ago for an emergency press conference on the future of AI ethics, and thousands of tech journalists, developers, and industry leaders were watching. At the same time, my father held up his phone and published a link to the public blockchain proving his time-stamped authorship. And then came the final move. Anya hit a key, and the entire original source code for Project Chimera was uploaded to every open-source repository on the planet, free, for everyone, forever. The empire Julian and Eleonora had built on a secret was just given away to the world. A company whose value was based on a lie had just had its core asset turned into a public good. Chapter 10. The New Fork. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Croft Innovations stock became worthless overnight. Julian was buried in lawsuits from investors. Eleanor, the star VC, became a pariah, a symbol of the tech world's worst impulses. Their empire didn't just fall, it evaporated. A few weeks later, my mother asked to meet. She was sitting in a generic coffee shop, looking small and tired, without her armor of power suits and success. The performance was over. Why, she asked, her voice hollow. "You could have had everything." "I do," I said, and I realized it was the absolute truth. It was the last time we ever spoke. Months later, the world of Port Meridian felt like a distant dream. My dad and I lived in a small rental house by the ocean, a few towns down the coast. Life was quiet. It was learning what he liked for breakfast, and him learning which books I'd read. It was awkward silences and sudden bursts of laughter. It was the slow, careful work of building a bridge across 12 years of lies. There were no super yachts or private jets, just the sound of the waves and the feeling of a quiet, unshakable peace. One afternoon, I was sitting at the kitchen table, my laptop open. My dad set a cup of tea down beside me, glancing at my screen. He smiled. I wasn't reading or watching videos. I was writing code. It was a small personal project, an educational tool for kids built using a new branch of the now public Chimera framework. The story was finally complete. Mom abandoned me at the harbor at 12 just to enjoy a luxurious vacation with her new husband. Then, then I found my real inheritance. It wasn't a trust fund. It was the truth. It was a community. It was the knowledge that my father had passed down to me. And it was the power to take the source code of my own life, create a new branch, a fork, and start building my own future. I typed another line of code and the program compiled without errors. I was creating something new. And I was finally free. My real inheritance wasn't the money they offered. It was the truth they tried to delete. It was the quiet, powerful realization that my worth was never up for negotiation. We didn't erase the past or the pain that came with it. We just stopped, letting it be the only line in our code. We chose to build a new future from the wreckage, not for profit, but for purpose. If you stayed with me through this journey, thank you. Drop a heart in the comments or share where you're watching from. I'd love to know how far truth can travel. And if this story stayed with you, don't forget to subscribe. There's more to tell, and I'd be honored to have you here when I do.